okay if we shut the door?
Yes.
Yes. I'm a squirrel, you know. Yeah. No, you're fine. Totally true.
Somebody tripped.
Oh, well, it's shut.
Yeah, I'll be fine.
Yeah.
All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Today we have Kristen Seale from College Station. She's an incredible flute player as well as beginner teacher, and now she's the head director at her school and had just a monstrous first year as head director and just did just amazing things. Just a super talented teacher, not a very good person, but
We're working on it.
no, amazing human being. Got her undergraduate here, originally from Arizona, and came here and master's, a former graduate assistant. Once a GA, always a GA, as we say, and that is a two-way street, for sure. So please welcome Kristen Seale.
There is a handout. It's really just the QR code to this presentation. I was worried about like internet not working, and I was like, this is the solution to my problem. So you don't have to look at the QR code or anything. It's just this. Okay, so if you look on the right-hand side of the page, this is completely foreign to wind players. This doesn't look like anything. There are a lot of similarities, right? So like accents, flams are just grace notes, right, for percussion and stuff like that. But there's some terminology that is different. So how many of you are actually percussionists? Anybody in the room? Yeah, me neither. So I'm not. I am a flute player by nature. That is my primary instrument. I'm going to move past this. That is my primary instrument. I married a percussionist, and so I foolishly thought that I would never have to teach percussion because it would always be him. Little did I know, they opened a third intermediate, and then after they opened the third middle school, he, as a high school director, could no longer travel to his feeder campuses, and they said, my head director at the time said, well, you married a percussionist, you can do it. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, this does not happen through like osmosis or like, you know, dreaming across the brain or anything. And so I spent my entire summer saying, please help me do this. That being said, I did march bass drum in high school, and I did march bass drum in college for 2 years. However, bass drum is not the same as teaching full-on percussion, right? So my current teaching position, he already told you about, I'm a head director, and that's how I became a percussion teacher. And I would claim being a percussion teacher now, and I'd honestly claim being a percussionist because I've spent enough time on it. I've been teaching beginner percussion about 7 years now, so fairly experienced. So teaching percussion, there's a lot to percussion. A lot of it is drum related or keyboard related, right? So the other large part of it is the accessories, and honestly, classroom management and teaching your kids how to do the things, okay? Most of us have problems with percussionists because they're at the back of the room. So I'm not having to babysit them. So honestly, that is my big goal the first year, is them being able to function in a room without me, if needed, okay? So that's part of what we're doing here with our things. Okay, so please, if you have to teach percussion, please don't tell your kids you're not an expert at percussion. You're an expert at being a music educator, okay? As soon as you tell them, I'm not a percussionist, your credibility goes out the window, okay? So please don't tell them that. Tell them that we're all going to do this. Now, that being said, your goal is to become as good a player as you can. Here's the secret. You only have to be a week ahead of them, right? So if you're teaching percussion and you're like, oh my goodness, I don't know what I'm doing, you're going to find somebody that plays percussion and you're going to start playing in front of them so that you can get some skills. Just be barely ahead of them, okay? There's great resources out there, and we are going to talk about that, okay? Focus on fundamentals. That's what we do for wind players, right? We focus on fundamentals. Percussionists have the same fundamentals, and honestly, they're very, very similar to wind player fundamentals. They're just different vocabulary, really. Okay? So, focusing on fundamentals and learn with the students. Okay? If there's something that you don't know, don't make up an answer. Say, you know what? We're going to talk about that next week. You don't even have to tell them you don't know. Okay? We're actually going to talk about that next week. And then go call up your professional or your mentor or your percussion person who's in your pocket and say, hey, what's the right wording for this? Okay? Most of the time when I don't know something, it's usually a very advanced percussion thing. So your goal your first year before you teach is to play a lot that summer. Okay? Your second year in the summer is to find a skill that you could get better at. The one I would recommend highly your second year is buzz rolls. Okay, buzz rolls are not easy, and they just take a lot of going past it. Okay, and using sticks. So when I was practicing, I would set my pad up someplace in my house in the summer, and every time I walked past it, I picked up the sticks and did something with it. Okay, last summer, I found out I was teaching beginner trumpet. I'm a flute player. I've never had to teach trumpet, but I had the time to practice trumpet, and so I did all summer. So I would practice enough to get yourself through like a 6th grade year, the first summer, and then your next goal is buzz rolls. Because honestly, they have to hear them. They have to hear what buzz rolls sound like, and buzz rolls are like a trial and error kind of thing. You have to change pressure in hand and things like that, and we're going to talk more about that in a second. Okay, so just stay ahead of them. Right now, I probably play at maybe a low freshman level, but I had to start at the beginning year. Okay, so start with your beginners and then go along with it.
I may be getting kind of ahead, but would you play drags with one hand or alternating hands?
You are ahead, and possibly both. Depends on the drag and the tempo and the context.
Okay.
Yeah, great question. Yeah, we totally are going to have time for questions because I talk really fast. So I imagine I'm going to like fly through this and have some Q&A time for sure. I also drink a lot of coffee. Okay, all right, so wind players. Here is, let me move my mouse. Okay, here's kind of what we do beginning year with wind players, right? We talk about embouchure, we talk about holding the instrument, we talk about posture, we talk about breath control, we talk about articulations, right? Like that's our wind players' big things, right? Percussionists have the same things, okay? They're going to talk about grip first, then we're going to be talking about rebounding strokes versus non-rebounding strokes, okay? And we're going to talk about stick height, okay? If you have a pair of sticks, you're welcome to get them out. If you have a pair of sticks, you're welcome to let one of your buddies borrow them. My first sticks that I like to use with my kids are SD1s, okay? What's nice about SD1s is they have this little flag. These are not SD1s. These are my husband's, okay? These are Pro Marks, okay? SD1s, I like SD1s. Oh, no, that's okay. You can use them. But there's a flag on the side of SD1s that is at the exact right spot that you should put your thumb, okay? So we are going to talk grip for a little bit. So you put your thumb on the flag, okay? Now, I tell them you take your first knuckle and you put it on the exact opposite side. Now, this is what I tell them because of COVID. We have some social distancing right here, okay? Social distancing. Okay, you do not want to crunch your fingers down so they touch. They're not meant to be that, okay? The fancy word for this is called fulcrum, okay? I call it with them the pinch, okay? So they're going to pinch it here. Their thumb is going to be flat here, okay? The rest of their hands, I place their stick here, the butt of their stick here, not in the fingers, not along the thumb. It's right here, okay? And then the rest of their hands, if they hold their stick right with their pinch, it will be like this, and they will be able to hold it up, okay? The rest of it is just around. Okay, now some students will pinch their fingers all up here like this. that's not the right spot. I tell them you want to give your fingers some space, okay? And if they're holding their sticks right, they have their social distancing and they have it in their hand like this, okay? The next part of that is just their other hand, okay? So we put their sticks in their hands. We hold them up like this so I can see their pinch. If they're dropping their sticks, their pinch is not right, okay? And then they wrap their fingers. And I have them hold their hands up like this because I'm checking for, are their fingers spread apart? Okay, are their fingers spread apart? And the reason is because when you get more advanced strokes like diddles or buzz rolls, they're going to need these back fingers. So if you're all crunched together like this, they're not going to be able to do that. So this is helping for later, okay? Now, after they're holding them like this, it is a 45. I've seen teachers like Eric Rath is a fantastic percussion educator. I use him as a resource, and obviously my husband. He will actually put a tape line in a 45 across the kids' drums. So when I have my kids play, they play on they don't play in the center of the drum. It's a terrible, terrible, terrible. If you can do pads, your ears will thank you. A lot of people use Remo pads. Remos are the standard pad for most people for a lot of years. However, what I found is they come out of tune because they have the nuts all the way around the side. Right now I use Off-World. This is my son's Real Feel. If you can have the same pad, that is helpful. Okay, I bought an Off-World set of percussion pads for my intermediate school and my middle school because what I found was I was asking them to practice and they weren't practicing. Well, they weren't practicing because they didn't want to lug home their practice pad and their stand, right? So I bought them the set at school and then they have theirs at home. And that's what it is. Okay, so aligning the pad, okay? This is pretty close, belly button down to here, okay? Your goal, okay, this is my belly button, this is the pad, it's one hand length, that's what I tell my students. They are going to change their height of their pad between 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade. They grow a lot in those years, right? So your arm, when you're playing, it's not parallel. You can't do it. You need some wrist, but it is slightly below parallel, okay, when you're hovering across the pad like this. So when I start them playing, we have our grip. We set the pad. I actually mark the pad on their stand of how high it should be, and we remeasure at the end of the year. Because some of those girls start shooting up in 6th grade. Some of the boys are end of 7th into 8th grade. So you have to check and be aware of how high. That includes in middle school when they're playing snare drum in your ensemble. They need to play it at the right height. Give them time to change that, okay? Because they're not going to be able to play buzz rolls properly unless they can do that, okay? So grip, we talked about grip, okay? The next thing I talk about is the 45. I call it their pizza, okay? And then, so we put our hands here on the pad, and then I just have them do flat hands, and then lift as high as they will go, okay? Naturally, it'll be 12 to 18 if they're doing snare, but this is the right angle, okay? So when they start their first stroke, they're gonna start with their right hand, but their left hand is going to be lifted also because that's their checkpoint. That's where they're aiming for. If your kids are getting more than about 12 inches, maybe 16, their thumbs are turned up too high. Okay? So we have our checkpoint with our left hand, and we're doing here, and we're trying to get it to match the other hand. That's the great thing about percussion is you can do 8 on a hand and match. You can switch 8 on the other hand and match, and then you can do both hands at the same time, okay? As wind players, we do a lot of reps. Do it again, do it again, do it again. That is so, so, so important for percussion is the reps, okay? And we forget that. It's like, oh, you just hit the drum. It is not just hitting the drum. There are a lot of different aspects, okay? Stick height we talk about a lot, okay? Full stroke is the thing they're gonna start with, full stroke. Okay, and they're going to probably play full stroke almost there in warm-ups their whole first year. You're going to still always do a full stroke. If you watch drum lines in high school, the first thing they do is a full stroke. 8 on a hand, 4 on a hand, 2 on a hand, 1 on a hand, all the things. Okay? so we're focusing on fundamentals, and I did jump into this a little bit. So when I start percussionists, I do 5 to 6 weeks on just snare. Okay, 5 to 6 weeks on just snare. Okay, my goal, I don't know what book you guys use. I use the Wessel's book. I have all of my percussionists in their own class. That's ideal. That's not everybody's situation. Okay, if you have them mixed, does anybody have them mixed in with your wind players? Yeah, if you have them mixed, it's still okay. What I would consider is if you have them mixed, have like a snare drum club after school where you can really talk about snare fundamentals. Okay, mallets, use the rebounding stroke fundamentals just as much as you do with snare. What?
So are you insinuating that if we have them mixed, have them on mallets in class and snare
Mm-hmm.
them and snare
Or,
them?
well, if you have them mixed, okay, one, they're going to be reading notes. Okay, it takes quite a bit more time to get around on keyboards, like note reading, sooner than it does for wind players. And so I think that snare fundamentals sometimes are hard to get into the nitty gritty when you've got somebody over here playing concert F. Okay, however, I do think it's possible. So you need to plan like it's 2 separate classes in one. And so you might, if you're doing snare, you might do, okay, this week we're doing 8 on a hand. We're doing concert F, and I'm holding concert F for a whole note. So we're going to do 8 on a hand. 1 te, 2 te, 3 te, 4 te. You can build those fundamentals in, but it does require planning. Okay, I've been fortunate enough where I can have them separate. I do think that advanced snare stuff, if you were to catch them once a week, and you're like, hey, let's really focus on this. When I teach in full band, I stand in the back of the band probably to at least 15 minutes of my rehearsal because I want to catch what they're not doing. So you can catch these things, just might go at a little bit slower pace. So if you're going to do concert F with your wind players, 8 on a hand is the exercise to start with. Then after that, you can start adding in anything like accent taps or whatever exercise. A lot of the exercises that they have in beginner books are not super beneficial for percussion. So you need to look at those skills that they're going to look at in percussion, and you're going to basically have to make it fit with whatever you're doing with the wind
Do
players.
you think those first couple of lessons in the Mark Wessel's books are good to kind of toss in behind?
Oh,
the
you
wind
totally
players
can.
on those?
Honestly, if you're in the Wessel's book has a grid pattern that would work great for that.
Got it.
Okay, so in the front of the Wessel's book, it has right, left, and you just pick whichever one you want. But so you can use the Wessel's book with like Rhythm Master or Yamaha or whatever, and you're doing at that point you're doing stick patterns. Okay, the first thing they're learning is right, 8 on a hand, 4 on a hand, 2 on a hand, 1 on a hand, and you can copy any grid and go, hey, as long as it's the same amount of measures, 100%. Yeah, but it does take extra planning, like it's an extra class, right? I never tell my percussionists that your assignment is the same as the wind players, ever. I always plan for them separately because they deserve it, right? Okay, so I did kind of put up here, beginners start on snare for 5 weeks if you're able. Okay, as soon as you start moving around with your wind players, if they're in the class together, then you probably need to spend some time on keyboards, because if the wind players get too ahead of percussion, then percussion's going to get lost with keyboards. Reading keyboards is hard, okay, to just go as fast because they're not touching their instrument. It's not connected to their hands like a flute is. It's down here, okay? So I start keyboard reading notes way further ahead than I do with the wind players. So great things, Mad Minute, I did not put this on there, I can add it, has where you can do like, remember how we had fast time test on math, where you're like multiples? It's basically that for wind players. So you can add in there, hey, I want to do F and E flat, and that's the only 2 notes, and it gives you little chunks of note reading, okay? Band Directors Talk Shop, their website has snippets, and they are awesome. Is it called snippets?
Yeah, it's on TPT.
Yeah, Teachers Pay Teachers. It's the Band Directors Talk Shop, Teachers Pay Teachers snippets. And I use those because they're like almost like bell work. And you can use it with your wind players too. So you go through and you need your keyboard players reading notes way before they touch the instrument. Okay? So if I'm doing snare only, I will do snare for 5 weeks. At week 3 is when I start adding in note reading. Okay? Wind players will start 2 notes, right? Maybe F. They start on F for a while, then they add F and E flat. Okay? When you start doing that with percussion, it's just a location thing. It's just like learning piano, right? Where's the F on the keyboard? They don't actually have to play it with sticks before they actually start playing it. Touching is hugely important. Okay? F and then E flat, and then F and then E flat. If you're using the Wessel's book, they actually start on black notes, right? So it's all the black notes, the patterns of 3 and the patterns of 2, and then it moves on from there. Okay? So snare, we're going to be concentrating on grip, rebounding stroke, different stroke types. We're going to get into stroke types in a minute. Keyboard, they really need to have a keyboard at home if at all possible. And I'm not talking a bell kit. Okay? Bell kits, do not let them rebound like they need to. Okay? So if they can do those, almost every company offers those practice marimbas now, which are awesome. And honestly, they cost about the same as like a saxophone, renting a saxophone or a clarinet or something like that. So really, it's worth looking into. And it's for muscle memory, right? Because we don't want them looking at their hands. So if they have that at home, that's great. If you cannot have that at home, you can also get, I've seen, I don't know where it is, I've seen kids do it, where they'll put it on a piece of paper, and it'll be just on a piece of paper laminated, and they have that. That won't let them rebound, but that'll let them feel the notes in the right spots. Encourage them to come in before school and practice, okay? Most of my percussionists are the ones that spend the most time in the band hall before school. 1, they don't want to be in the gym with all the rowdy kids, right? And then 2, a full-size instrument sounds a lot better, okay? So they have xylos that are practice size. They also have keyboards. There are several companies. I know we use Marimba Warehouse for ours, and it puts like a resonator box underneath. It's really not bad sounding. I think my husband used it on a gig one time.
What was
It's
that
just
company called?
Marimba Warehouse. Yeah.
And they do rentals, right?
Yeah, they do rentals, rent to own. Yeah. And they used to, where if you rented so many, they would give you one for your school to use. I actually have a marimba warehouse that somebody borrowed or bought and didn't need it anymore, and so they donated it to the school, and I use it in class. So it's cheaper than a Yamaha, or a full size. Okay, keyboard essentials. The very first year, the very first note. Your biggest focus is them not looking at their hands. Okay? From the very beginning. 1 note, you're going to play concert F, 8 on a hand. Okay? If they're rebounding appropriately, their hands won't get in their way if they're playing an F, right? Because they're rebounding out of their stick's way, right? So you can still do the same thing in full band if you have your percussionist in full band on a concert F, but you're going to play 8 on a hand on a keyboard instead of hold it or roll it or whatever. 8 on a hand would be much better than rolling on a note, okay? All of this, of course, just takes time ahead. So 8 notes are way better than rolling. Yes, eventually we get into rolling. Not important until maybe after a buzz roll, although a keyboard roll is not the same as a snare roll, okay? All right. Stroke placement on keyboard. I tell my kids to aim for the middle of the bar. In reality, it's slightly off center. Okay, so they're aiming for the middle of the bar on the naturals down here, but they're also aiming for the bar on the upper notes. Okay, that does take a wrist movement. Okay, you can't just hit the edge of the bar. When they're moving faster in middle school, they might hit the edge of the bar. They cannot hit on the string. It doesn't sound the same. It's called a node. It's a dead spot. Okay, so when they go faster, they will, but honestly, I really don't get into that much, and they might use it more in high school. My kids, the speed of the music, they can really go for middle of the bar most of the time.
And then, of course, the middle of the bar is usually where the resonators are.
Yes.
And plus, or also at the edge of the bar, you can get some of that resonator, but
You can.
not as much as like
Correct.
the center of the bar.
Yeah, correct. And really, in those fast passages, you wouldn't hear the center of the bar quite as much as you would a roll. So if they're rolling it, of course, yes. And then your hands are going to have to be stacked, right? When you're rolling, because you can't like that. They're going to have to be stacked. And there's some techniques to that too. All right. So stroke types on percussion. This is like articulations for percussion. Okay. So we're talking like a wind player, right? Because we're wind players. Okay. So here are the different strokes that we're going to use, and I'm going to show you the context that you're going to use them on. Okay, rebounding stroke is our first one. Okay, we all get the pictures. All right, here's our rebounding stroke. It's also known as a legato stroke. Wind players, okay, this is the most resonation you're going to get out of the drum. Okay, resonance. Thank you. It's also the most go-to stroke. Okay, if you don't see any kind of articulations in the music, this is the one you're going to use. If you're going to use 8 on a hand, this is the one you're going to use. Basically, that just means a full stroke. It's 12 inches, right? So, rebounding stroke, okay? When we're playing snare drum, okay, there's no hitch in it. It's not like this is a down and this is an up. It's like bouncing a basketball. So when I have my kids start, before they even play on snare, I have them put their hands flat because that's how I want them anyway. And then I'm doing this, 8 on a hand. Okay, then this hand, 8 on a hand. Okay, then 4 on a hand. Okay, then 2 on a hand. It's a basketball. Okay, then when they start playing, you can put their stick in their hand again. They have their flat hand. It's still the same movement. Okay, when I do 4 mallets, I use the left hand as a guide also, right? It's just a different movement. That's middle school level, so I'm not going to talk about 4 mallets. I don't hit 4 mallets until middle school. Okay, I'm really doing this. Okay, so did that answer your question?
No, I'm wondering what tempo do you usually start with?
Oh, great question. So tempo-wise, I have a metronome because yes. Tempo-wise, if you go too slow, I feel like it's weird. Like it's weirder for them if they do that. So, so this is probably 70. 1 tay, 2 tay, 3 tay, 4 tay. 1 tay, 2 tay, 3 tay, 4 tay. Now, the more weeks I'm on it, the faster I'm gonna get, because tempo does matter, right? And especially when you start doing this sticking patterns for like paradiddles and stuff like that. But I do find 70 is a great tempo for beginning, right at the beginning. If you go any slower than that, you're probably going to get into the doing dumb things, because we're like, hey, up, 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 and we don't pause at the top when we normally play, right? So I'm doing 8 notes at 70, okay, maybe 80. And then also, these things can get really monotonous and boring. Okay, the first like 6 weeks of percussion is super, super boring for the kids. So I pulled up I got a playlist of clean music at 80 beats per minute, and we do like the score, Imagine Dragons, like we do it, and I can look at it. Yeah.
Please share that playlist.
Oh yes, I can share that playlist. Actually, I'll add it into the presentation. Would that be okay? So yeah, I have a playlist, and I just do Imagine Dragons, and I'm like, oh yeah. And sometimes I ask them, but you can't ask. You got to be careful with that because they might do some non-appropriate school things. So mine's all like Imagine Dragons, the score. Some stand tunes are okay, others not so much. Please pick clean stuff. Okay. So when you're doing this, we're just jamming out. Now, the next important thing is they have to tap their foot. Okay, so when I tap my foot, I don't have them stand straight up and down. That's uncomfortable. So we all tap our right foot. That's going to be the one that we do. Okay, they'll kick their foot out a little bit, and they tap their foot. Always with a foot. Because when you're doing this, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, they have to do it. Have to tap your foot. Non-negotiable. And if they kick it out, they can do it while they're standing. If they have to, they do left, but what I found is most of my kids are not left-handed, and so that's awkward for them, okay? If they get tired, it's because they're not kicking it out, okay? Tapping your foot with your feet straight under you is really hard to do, okay? Tapping your foot, non-negotiable. So this is a rebounding stroke. We practice a lot of rebounding with music, okay? Here is two different strokes. Okay, it's a downstroke and it's a tap. Okay, a downstroke is an accent on snare drum. Okay, so a downstroke is literally start up, go down, and end low. So really, it is a full downstroke and then ends at tap height. Tap height for me is like 3 inches. Okay, 3 inches, maybe 2, depending, but it's low. It's significantly lower. So here is my accent, and then my tap height is this high. So the reason I'm talking about these together is because most of the time, an upstroke is getting you ready for a downstroke or a full rebounding stroke. Okay, so when they're doing a downstroke, okay, they're going to start high and they're going to go low. What changes that is pressure in the back of your hand. Okay, so I'm keeping my hand closed. When we rebound, the stick is always in your hand until this point. Like we're still doing this. It doesn't come off your palm until you start getting into buzz. Okay, so it's in your hand. Okay, so the only thing that I'm doing is I'm adding pressure back here. Would I say pressure to the kids? No, I would not say pressure to the kids. It's like telling them to play with tension. Never, ever, ever tell them to play with tension. That's the wrong vocabulary. Okay, so I'm going to start high and I'm going to end here. And that's all I tell them. Okay, I'm going to start high and I'm going to end low. Okay, now for an upstroke, you're going to start low and end high. The difference with upstroke is you can't let it fall. And this is what I tell my kids. With tap strokes, you can't let the stick do what it wants. Yes, can I drop it and hit the head? Yes, but it's going to sound really hollow. And I show them that it sounds hollow. Okay, I want to intentionally go down and up. It's a Nike swoosh is what I tell them, or a check. Okay, so down and up, down and up. Now, an upstroke is a tap, right? So there's no kind of emphasis on it. A downstroke, there is emphasis because it's associated with an accent, right? So as a wind player, we use more air for an accent. Well, they're just essentially using more velocity in their stick because they're stopping it down here. It naturally happens. Okay, they don't have to add more pressure to make it happen. Forcing it to stay low, you're going to get that downstroke accent to happen on its own. It does not need any more energy from you. Okay. Okay, so this is an example of downstrokes and taps or upstrokes. Okay, what you need to know is the first two are downstrokes. So I'm going to play this like I'm playing it as alternating. Okay, right, left, right, left, right, left. Okay, these are because my right hand is playing the first note right here, and my right hand is also playing this one right here. Okay, I'm going to actually do a downstroke here because it needs to stay down for a tap, right? It's also an accent, right? So that accent is going to stay down, and then this one is going to be an upstroke because the very next one over here is another downstroke, right? So if you have an accent, you need to see how soon did that hand play a note before that and associate what it is with it. So I tell my kids, if you see accents, there are taps in there and there are upstrokes in there. Where are they? And we actually say down, down, and then up, up. Okay? If these were non-accented, these would be taps. You see that? Okay? If these were not accented, these would be a tap stroke. Okay? So we say down, down, up, up, down, down. And we physically say those things. Instead of 1, 2, we can all count that, right? Yeah.
Is there a reason they would go stick to a tap as opposed to going back to a full rebound?
Say that again?
Is there a reason why they would stick to a tap where they stay low as opposed to going to full rebound strokes?
It just depends on what's after it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really just a prep for whatever. So everything, anytime you see an accent, you have to see where the prep is or if you need a prep, right? Okay. All right, snare stroke types. Here we go. Yes, so buzz stroke. So Multiple bounce, concert percussion, concert rolls, right? It's a closed roll or press roll. My husband put over information in this slide because he's a percussionist. But it's low and slow, and it's from the elbow. So up until this point, I tell my kids everything is wrist. Up until this point, everything is just your wrist. So if you were to hold this, because they want to do way too much motion, and I want to make sure their wrist is doing it. So everything's a wrist. Can I see your wrist moving? Because this is going to get really tiring. Okay. The reason I told you the second summer to work on buzz rolls is because this is a feel-based thing, okay? It's a pressing this into the head, right? Okay? So instead of rebounding up, you're going to leave it on the head. I practice, it does matter that their sticks match, okay? It does matter, okay? Because they're going to buzz differently. I didn't know that, and so when I was practicing my snare drum roll, I was like, I am trying everything in my power to make this snare drum sound awesome, and my left hand sounds different than my right hand. Why is that? It was unmatched sticks. Okay, so they're going to throw the stick down, and they're going to leave it on the head. Now, this is where the hand is no longer attached to the back of the drumstick, right? So their hands are open. Okay, so in this point, we've been doing rebounding. Now, we're opening our hand. Does it leave the fingers? Absolutely not. It does not, but it's open, okay? It's open in their hand now, okay? And we're just doing low, low, low. And all I'm doing is trying to get them to throw the stick down with enough velocity that I get lots of bounces. The reason that they're not going to get lots of bounces is because they're too tight in the back of their hand, okay? Or their stick is still in their hand, right? Okay, so they're going to do it. This is the stroke that comes from the elbow pitch, right? So their pinkies always on the stick. They're always on the stick, okay? Always on the stick, okay? This is not I let go of my fingers like this, okay? So the pads of my fingers are attached to my stick. They don't leave, okay? I will go like this and watch the back of their hand to see if they're leaving it open. Okay, I'm weird like that. I might be sitting on the floor from the side. Okay, I even show them. I'll go around like this and show them. See, look, the stick is, my hand is open now. Okay, and it's just, can I get them to get lots of bounces? I show them. We do it in class. The great thing about this is you can do both hands at the same time. Okay, but I'm looking for no tea parties. Are the pads of their fingers touching the back of their stick? Okay, no tea parties. I'm also want to make sure that they're not in their fingers. Okay, you'll see that with their pizza. If their pizza is too big, they might be in their fingers. Okay, it's the same thing. You're just throwing it down hard, okay, and you're letting it stay there. And you just keep practicing it. We actually don't use buzz rolls for a while. We start this before we actually get to it in the book. Okay, so we'll start doing this before we get in the book. And then you can start speeding it up and it starts smoothing out, and then eventually they get there, okay? It does have to do, and then I tell them this, okay, with how much are you squeezing your stick, okay? We're quite a bit looser on this, okay? Up until this point, we have our fulcrum, and that's the pivot point of the stick, okay? You actually have to be a little bit looser on this stroke, okay? And so it's a lot of feel. I show it to them. I show them how buzz rolls sound, and then I say, go home, and I want you to think about how firm are you pinching your stick. Well, try loosening it up and see what happens, okay? And then always keep your pad, or your pinky on the stick, because that's the one they want to throw off first, okay? Okay. Rolls.
Quick question. I know the slashes indicate a roll notation. Would there be a difference in notation between a closed roll and an open roll?
So open rolls are more high school based, right? So marching drum line is more of an open roll. You will see an open roll in maybe some rudimental etudes. They're probably not going to do those in your class. I teach concert roll until spring break. So everything that I do is a closed roll or a buzz roll or multiple bounce until spring break. And then I start doing a little bit more of that because they have a little more finger control in the back. Okay, your double bounce roll is going to be this finger, right? Okay, and that's where we get the different speeds. Okay, so really, when they're doing these rolls, these fingers are the ones that are in a double bounce. These fingers are the ones that are controlling how open it is. So that at that point, it's a tripod based roll, right? And like I said, we don't get to that until about spring break.
What
Yeah.
about like 5 and 9 stroke rolls? Are those?
Yeah, so when you see them in the book, they are going to be that, okay? You're going to count them like doubles. But, and that's about what I'm going to talk to. So, in the very top, okay, that is how the simplified notation of rolls looks. Your hands are going to be doing 16th notes for the first while, right? So, their hands are actually playing this side of it. One slash typically means a diddle, which is 2 bounces, and that's where the 5-stroke roll comes in, or the 9-stroke roll, or stuff like that. Okay, so when I teach them as beginners, yes, they know what a 5-stroke roll is, but they're multiple bouncing, not just duples. Does that make sense? Yes. Okay, so this is the simplified form. This is what their hands are doing. So when we count 1, 2, ta, ta, 3, rest. 1, 2, ta, ta, 3. So it looks like 1, 2, ta, ta, 3. 1, 2, ta, ta, 3. It's the same thing, both measures. So I'm using multiple bounce just because their concert roll is more important to them in middle school than a rudimental roll. Right? Okay. Okay. So here's the different notations so that you will know. So every time we count something, we count with 16th notes. So here I would be counting 1 ta ta ta, 2 ta ta ta, 3, and that's what my hands are doing. 1 ta ta ta, 2 ta ta ta, 3, rest, measure. Okay, and then so I'm playing the same thing, but I'm seeing different things. Okay, in your book, you're going to see this first. This is the notation that they're going to use more in middle school or in band pieces. So you need to know if you see a roll, think 16th notes. Now that will change as they get older and in middle school, triplet based rolls and stuff like that. But they're not going to use that in 6th grade at all, or 7th grade most likely, unless they're auditioning for Regent Band.
Okay, so when you're rolling,
Mm-hmm.
you said multiple bounce, so you're really doing like
This.
4 or 5.
Oh yeah, as many as I can squeeze.
Okay.
Yeah, as many as
Not
I can.
just 2.
Nope, not just 2. I do multiple bounce for all of this notation in middle school.
And even though that's confusing to us, it's not to them
It's
because they
not.
don't know any different, right? Like I've
Right.
never done it, but I would imagine the kids would be like, okay.
Yeah, you just tell them, and they're going to see it like this first
Okay.
in their books. Most likely they're going to see it like this in their books first, and then they're going to see that. And you just tell them, hey, see all those slashes? That means you're going to multiple bounce 16th notes. How many 16th notes are in a quarter? How many 16th notes are in a half note? Okay? So here this is called the skeleton pattern. Okay? 1, ta, 2, ta, 3, ta, 4, ta. Here, I'm going right, right, left, right, right, left, right, right, left, right. Okay? So how many 16th notes fit in an 8th note? 2. So I'm doing that. Okay? I will talk about sticking. There's another sticking in there, but right, right, left, right, right, left, right. The very last stroke has no slashes over it. That means you're not going to bounce it. And that's something you'll need to listen for. 1, right, left, stop, right, left, stop, right, left, stop. Okay? Same thing here. This is right, left, right, right, left, right. Okay? This one was 1, 2, or 1, 1, ta, 2, ta, 3. Okay? This is mostly what they'll see. They won't probably see this their beginner year in band music, but they will see it their 7th grade year. What?
Something I struggle with, and something like that last measure, right?
Mhm.
The roll skeleton is, you're breaking it down to 16th notes.
Yep.
But sometimes some tempos that's kind of hard.
Yeah, you're right. Sometimes it is, but honestly for them it's not. Like you just that's where the tempo comes in with your warm-ups and pushing the tempo.
So teach
Yeah.
them to do it at that 16th note skeleton in multiple tempos. Don't change the skeleton.
Don't change the skeleton.
Okay.
Yep, great.
Do you have the time for second question? Sorry.
Let me keep going and then yes. Okay? I want to make sure that we get all the way through it. Okay, rhythm sheets. You have to do them with percussion. They have to be able to count. Everything that I do in percussion, they count and play at the same time. Okay? When they get to keyboards, they say note names. F, F. For flats, instead of saying B flat, we add a F to the end of it. So beef is very funny to say. Beef, beef, eef, eef. They have to say note names. So when they're touching their keyboard, they're always doing two things. One, this keeps them from talking. Two, it keeps them totally engaged, right? Because they're not going to they have to read note names on the page. They have to touch it and say it. Eef, eef, F, F. Okay? Always, always. I like Vic First web rhythms because it's more advanced than what you're going to see on most rhythm sheets you'll use with full band. Okay? Teachers Pay Teachers on your band director's page, she also has rhythm sheets. Those are the ones that I use for my full band. The percussion probably needs to get to set 3 before you get there because they're going to be seeing 16th notes a lot sooner than the wind players. The Vic Firth web rhythms also has a play along track. So you can put that in your band or in your percussion class and they can play with it. It has different speeds. So you can speed it up and stuff like that too. These are great. Okay, Robbie Green has some great stuff. Also, okay, sticking patterns. Sticking patterns, super important. Your snare drummer gets hung up because of sticking patterns. Okay, good rule of thumb. You can do alternating right, left, numbers. On the numbers is your right hand. Okay, good rule of thumb. You want your right hand on beat 1. Okay, so right, left, right, left, right. Okay. So you see in measure number 3, I put the left hand on the tay because I want my right hand on the number. That's why I put it there. This pattern at the end happens so much, the left, right, okay? And you want your right hand on the beat. So when percussionists have a snare drum part, they're probably getting hung up because of a sticking thing. We'll say it too. Right, left, right, left. Right, left, right, okay? I did add the 16th note patterns in here. Right, left, right, right, left. That's basically like you're playing 4 16th notes, but you're leaving out your first left hand. Okay? Same thing here. Right, left, left. Right, left, left. And then here, left, right, left. Left, right, left. Okay? These are patterns you can practice when your kids are doing concert F. Right?
You just want your right hand on the big beats.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. And you could play the first measure right. But if you can alternate, you should. Okay. On mallets, I teach my kids no more than 2 notes on one hand. Okay. Alternate. Same typical rules, but mallets is a whole different ballgame where sometimes you can do some doubles in there. Okay. So I put the sticking in there. You should. That's called natural sticking. Percussionist, yeah, natural sticking. Okay. I'm gonna have to fly a little bit. This is the order of instruments and how I would teach them. So I focus on snare and mallets the very first year. You're going to probably throw some accessories at them at some point. Everything is either a drum or a keyboard. Okay? And then these are the ones they're going to use first, most likely. Okay? Here are some videos on technique for all of those instruments. So before you teach them that, will you watch the video and see what technique they recommend and then teach them that? There is a right way and a wrong way to hold crash cymbals. I'm not going to go into it, but there is, okay? Your hands do not go in the straps. They don't, okay?
I'm going to clinic on that tomorrow.
Great. Go to that one. That's a good one. Okay? So this is the order I would teach the accessories. This is the one in order of most used. Okay? Great. Beginner class structure. I've got like 1 minute, y'all. That's how I would structure my class. I did put a middle school band class in there too. Your biggest thing about class structure is structure. You want your kids coming out with knowing how to function on their own. How do they set up stuff? Will you designate someone in your section that asks you the questions for the section? Hey, what are we playing today? Hey, are we starting on snare today or are we starting on keyboard today? That way you have one person asking you questions and not all of them. Right? They're the person that asks you. You train them into that. Don't ask me. I'm not asking questions, or I'm not answering questions. Jonathan knows. And then they just do that. Or you write it on the board the day before. Okay? All right. Rotating. Tamara, what time is it supposed to stop?
Now,
Good. Here's my chart for rotating. Please rotate your kids on instruments in their middle school year. Okay, you need your kids touching all the things before they get to high school. Okay, and then, yeah, we talked about all this. Get yourself a mentor that you can call and ask questions to. Okay, if you would like, here's resources for you. 5-minute drill. Eric Rath wrote it. It's a fantastic one. He also just came out with a daily drill. That would be amazing for middle school. Amazing. Okay? And then there's a Facebook group at the bottom of the page. Okay? I'm sorry I didn't get all the way
So,
through it.
we are going to lunch. Like, if you have plans and you need to go, but can you hang out?
I
and
can
answer
hang out.
questions? So
Yes.
she'll stay. One thing, Dr. Tevelite sent me the link, and I was expecting something different this year because of how they made us get them tons of information ahead of time, but it's the same. So you're going to say how many hours total. So you're going to look at the schedule and be like, I plan to go to this much, put in how many hours. It could be 30. I mean, it could be a lot if you've been going to everything. I haven't added, it could be more, but it's a lot. Just put it in, and then I would recommend you keep your schedule and you highlight the things. I'm actually a little worried now I won't get GT credit because it's not, but I guess I never got to put in. So it's easier for you, and hopefully it doesn't matter, but I was thinking it would be exact. Okay, so
Okay.
let's thank Kristen.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, y'all want to ask questions? I'm game
And
for it.
I want to keep the live stream going, so just head out if you need to go, but I want to get the questions on the video if we can.
Yeah. Okay.
So I do have a separate percussion class, but my administration is trying to put like up to 20 kids. Do you have suggestions like for when there's not enough instruments? First of all, to advocate to not have that many kids, but if I have that many kids.
Right. So you always can do snare and keyboard at the same time, right? So you can also double up on instruments. So typically 2 on a keyboard is plenty unless you have like a 4.5 octave. Now, all of those things kids can do. So if a kid's on a keyboard instrument and somebody else is not, they can do 8 on a hand in the background and do the skeleton pattern. Or they can be working on rolls in the background. That will take planning, but you can rotate. Absolutely. Yeah. What?
Could you go back to the examples you had, and could you play the second example, the one that had a 4 next to it? Keep going.
Keep going.
That one.
The 4? Yeah. So that's going to be 16th oboists. 1 ta ta 2 ta ta 3. Stop. And 1 ta ta 2 ta ta 3. Yeah. Does that make sense? So if it was a whole note, okay, really that's a, what your hands are doing, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, that's a 17 stroke roll. Does that make sense? 17 stroke roll. Okay, now this one, that one is a 9 stroke roll, number 1. Okay, this one right here is a 5 stroke roll, 2 for each hand, right, left, right, that's 5 strokes. Does that make sense? Yeah. Any other questions? Yes.
I tried to scan the QR code.
Uh-huh.
It wouldn't let me. Like, it wouldn't.
Oh, anybody else having that problem? It might be a sharing thing. I will look. Okay.
Oh, yes.
Okay. Yes.
So this year I'm gonna have an advanced percussion class.
Yes.
So all second and third year players will be together. What book or what resources or what would you
Great
suggest?
question. What book did you use for beginners?
I just used. So I'm in a 7th and 8th grade campus.
Okay.
And so they use Rhythm Master their 6th grade year.
Okay. If you have them by themselves, I would get them in a percussion book.
Like just
Wessel's. They're
the Fresh Approach.
Yeah, Fresh Approach to Snare is a great book. If you have them by themselves, so Eric Rath offers that 5-minute drill. That's not an everyday book. That's more of a, my kids are going to be in full band, like can they warm up by themselves kind of thing. But the skills in there are awesome.
So that would be better than like my symphonic and my concert bands are gonna have like the blue book. So that would be better than that.
Are you talking about foundations for actually that book has some great stuff in it. So you have like options 1, 2, 3, and 4. I think that has great stuff in it, and you could teach them out of that book. The options are great. They should probably, if they're advanced, like into 8th grade, they should be pushing into option 4. Does that help? Yeah.
What about like ensembles? Do you have any favorite percussion ensembles? ensemble books for?
Yes, Beyond Basics is my favorite percussion ensemble book. It's by, Rath is one of the composers in it. It's also, I think, Ralph Hicks. And it has a bunch of different stuff in there. It has keyboard ensembles, but it also one of them is called Trapdoor, and it's all about teaching kids how to set up a trap table in order to access all of their stuff. That goes into the organizational category. That's more middle school based, which is why I didn't touch on it today. Yeah. Yeah, Beyond Basics has like 7 or 8 of them in there, and they're great, especially for middle school. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
On the slide before this one, you have like the Z roll and then the
Yeah. It's
Can you tell me the difference between those?
It's essentially, I tell them it's essentially the same thing.
Oh, thank goodness.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
thought it was a fraud, 'cause I didn't say it.
No, you're good. Yeah.
Do you teach paradiddles?
I do.
Yeah.
Yes, I do. And that'll be like in the beginner, like stick control. And I could have probably put a slide in here for that. Stick control, different grids. They start 4 on a hand, 2 on a hand, 1 on a hand. Okay. Alternating is 1 on a hand. And then that's where we go into doubles, different doubles. So right, right, left, right. Right, right, left, right, left, left, right, left, right. You know, or right, left, right, left, left. And we actually say, eventually paradiddles have accents with them. So it's down, up, tap, tap, down, up, tap, tap. Because when you have paradiddles, a lot of times it'll be an accent on the first stroke. And if it is, and it's a paradiddle, it's right, left, right, right. When your left hand plays, it has to go up because it's going to come down on the next one. Great question. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
Can you explain the difference between a closed roll and an open roll?
Yeah. Yeah. So a closed roll is your multiple bounce. You're going to get more bounces with the stick. An open roll is only 2 bounces. Okay.
How do you know when to use which one?
So, yeah, that's a great question. So, in concert percussion, you're probably going to use the closed roll. Okay. I really haven't seen any middle school pieces that call for them to have an open roll. When you're teaching open rolls, the reason that you're teaching open rolls is so that eventually in high school they can play on the snare line. Right? But in middle school audition music, they're not going to play an open roll. In band pieces, they're not going to play an open roll.
So no matter how it's notated, you can assume if it's middle school music,
If it's concert music, you can assume it's going to be a closed roll. Yeah.
I just want to piggyback on your comment with sometimes it's a stylistic choice to use an open roll in a concert march, especially an old concert
Correct. That'll be your
march. That would be more stylistic.
maybe your honor band recording differences as opposed to UIL, or but we don't typically get in middle school. We don't typically get into that higher level literature with those kids as much. Yeah.
Sorry, I missed it. So the closed roll is a multiple bounce, so like a buzz roll?
Yeah.
And then the open roll would be a double?
Yeah, the diddle.
Diddle.
Yeah, just 2. Yeah. Yeah. And it's worth teaching them, right? It's kind of like double tonguing. If you don't teach them double tonguing before they get to high school, they're going to need it in high school and they won't know how to do it. And so that's essentially what you're doing with open rolls or diddles. That's what the actual technical term is, a diddle, 2 on that one hand. Yeah. Yeah. What?
I frequently get kids with their non-dominant hand and they don't get the same quality of buzz.
Correct.
And so, they kind of live with that in middle school and they get to the high school and they're not. You have.
Yeah. So when you're doing like this, yeah, so when you're doing like this, their goal is to match their dominant hand, right? So that's why when you do 2 at a time, you're like, hey, will you match your other hand? That's also like when you're doing 1 ta 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 2, you might switch it left, right, left, right, left, left, right, left, right, left. So I do both, right, left, 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 right. Forcing them to use both hands. Absolutely. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, I hope that was helpful. If you have more, let me know. Thank you. Very appropriate for this one. Yes, good job.